Good day, everyone. Welcome to the International Trade Center at the Women's Business Development Center webinar about why go international. Why export? Why now? So we're going to do this as a webinar. Typically, if I do a seminar, it'd be an hour and a half, 2 hours, a lot of give and take. We would go down some tangents, we'd answer some questions, but in this format, it's going to be different, right? So we'll try to keep this conversational, like we're speaking in a coffee shop and I'm doing all the talking. I will, you know what, and if you've got questions, put them in chat. And at the end, I'll try to get to whatever I can get to. Okay, and I can't promise you that I'll get to everything in the chats, but hopefully we will. Apologize for any technology issues that may pop up as well. And but I think we've got an interesting webinar today. So I'm going to wait about another minute, and then we'll get into it. I see we have people jumping in every few seconds. We'll wait a little bit more. Okay. And off we go. Wait. Technology issues, of course. Hold on. As soon as these advance, we'll get started. The good thing is we have people jumping in while I'm doing this. All right, hold on, sorry. Let's get our presentation back. And they're off. Okay. The Women's Business Development Center, a lot of you know about. It's well-established, well-known center that helps companies and has a menu of services that it offers to different companies, right? You know, they can help you with finance questions, putting together a business plan, talking about your branding. And in May of this year, to add to their menu of services, the WBDC added an International Trade Center. So now, in addition to the services they offer already, is just another item on the menu. Are you interested in export? Do you think you might want to find out more about exporting? And that's what I can do, help you with. So the International Trade Center is at the WBDC on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. There's 8 international trade centers around the state of Illinois. We're an extension of the state of Illinois Office of Trade and Investment. And what we can do is we can help you develop an export business plan. We can help you with market research and talk about strategy and how to put your channel together. We can help you with shipping and logistics and payments and these type of issues. And we'll touch on this as we go along. But it is new, and it's quite available now. So who am I? Okay, so my background's in international business. That's what I've spent my career doing for the last 25 years. I worked for different American companies managing their global businesses. In many cases, it could be starting from scratch, and many times it was taking over something that was already in place and growing it. My focus has always been on sales channels, right? Whether it's a distribution channel or a direct channel, it's always been about growing a business, and my focus has very much, again, been channels. That's taken me to living on 4 continents. I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Asia, I've lived in Europe. I've worked in all world regions. I've worked in over 65 countries. It's taken me about everywhere. And now I'm very pleased to be able to apply this to helping companies at the WBDC and elsewhere to grow their exports. So I've got a very broad background. I've always looked at a strategic orientation, and in my career, you know what, I've started out in the electrical business. And a typical career path would have been, okay, let's go to another electrical business or just grow my my network and my knowledge in that particular industry. But I didn't choose to go that way. I've always felt that I wanted to be the international guy. So I went to, as I made career changes over 25, 30 years of my career, made a company change. It was always to come in and take their business to the next level internationally. So it's given me a exposure to a lot of different industries, into industrial markets, into commercial markets, into retail markets, into consumer markets, and a real broad-based background. I've always looked at things, you know, I've been with companies where I've had to have hands-on with the financials, with the logistics, and considering the political and cultural factors going into particular markets. So I think I bring a pretty unique, wide background to this, and why I'm enjoying it and why I think I'm effective. So I've been involved in the international trade community in Chicago for quite a while. Board of directors in the National Trade Association. I've worked on the District Export Council, which is I was an appointee by the Federal Department of Commerce to help Illinois companies with their exports. So a lot of background in terms of international business, and I've been at various universities and associations speaking about these topics. I'm from Chicago. I went to Northwestern. I majoring in economics and communications, and I got an MBA overseas at a Grande École in Paris, France. So what we're going to do today. Today is the first webinar that the International Trade Center at the WBDC has put on. And we're going to be starting from a general point of view, right? It's going to be general and conceptual. I'm going to try to make a strategic proposal why I think exporting could be good for your business. As we go along, and there'll be webinars in the future, we'll get into more detail. We'll go step by step and get into the specifics of exporting. For example, the next webinar will just have an overview of the exporting process. Let's look at the components of marketing and channels and logistics and payments and things like that. As we go further into our webinar series, we'll get into detail and have one about payments and trade finance. And we'll have one about logistics and international shipping and documentation. And then further, we can get into, well, what about the European market? Or what about the Asian markets? Or we can get into food categories as well, categories as we go into. For example, I anticipate something on the food business and food exports down the line. So again, this is the beginning. This is the start. It's general. Bear with me. And you know, as we go along, if you're looking for detail, you'll get it. So this webinar is more about exports, less on imports, right? I'm funded by the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois wants to promote exports, and that's what brings money to the state of Illinois. So less on imports. Now, if you got a question on imports, you want to call me and say, this is my idea, what I'm trying to do. If I know anything about it, you know what, my my experience, my career's been on exports. If I know something about it, I'll certainly help. Maybe it's like, hey, can you help me with a logistics provider on my importing business? Sure, we know people that we can send you a resource list about people who are involved in logistics or involved in trade compliance and documentation, et cetera. This is about products and services. So if you've got a service and you're an advisor, service, you're a consultant and you consult companies in Boston and New York, why can't you consult people in Toronto or Mexico City? So we're including products and services in what we're talking about today. I may use the term widgets. Widgets is your product or service, right? So that's the term that I may use as we go along, widgets. The assumption here is, well, is you could be starting out into export, or you could already be doing some exporting and you're just looking to add more countries or take your exports to a next level. The ITC can help you in either case. How I'm looking at this, the approach is where your business is more targeted towards setting up a long-term business. We want to talk about setting up a process and a structure for your business. If you're getting into exporting, we're anticipating you're going to be in exporting 5 years from now or 10 years from now with your business, right? This is less about deals and transactions, although we can help you on something like that. But typically more, I'm looking at this is a business we're building, right? And it's a long-term business, a long-term export business that we're talking about here. A premise as well is that you already have an established business in the US. You know how to compete. You're competing, you got a set of competitors, you know your value proposition, you understand the market you're operating in. And this is where we would start in our discussions is, okay, can we export? We would leverage off this as much as we can. We would try to understand how you're competing today as much as we can. Of course, we need to adapt to, as we go overseas, right? As we go internationally, but we'll try to, we're all resource, we're starved for resources. We're all resource short, right? So the point is we want to leverage and piggyback on as much of what we're doing in the US as possible. So why go international? Well, let's start with some data from the US Department of Commerce. For a start, 95% of the world's population lives outside the USA, okay? 85% of the world's purchasing power, 85% of the world's money is outside the USA. There are some famous bank robber back in the 1920s that they finally tracked him down and asked him, why do you rob banks? And his answer was, because that's where the money is. The same thing applies to exporting. Why do we export? Because that's where the money is. 80% of US exporters have less than 20 employees. So it's not unusual for a small company to export. 60% of small companies export more than 20% of their sales. So if you're thinking about exporting, you're not alone. The US Department of Commerce states the companies that export are more profitable than those who do not. And companies that export have a higher value than those who do not. So companies that are sold at some point in the future, the ones that export get a higher valuation, a healthier company for exporting. Let's talk about Illinois exports. Illinois exports have grown over the years. In 2018, Illinois exporting totaled over $65 billion. Illinois is the largest exporting state in the Midwest, number 5 in the US. The point here is there's a lot of people in the international trade community in Illinois who therefore are here that are experienced exporters, and that whole infrastructure of how to help exporters, bankers, trade compliance people, customs lawyers, logistics professionals, there's a lot of them around, especially in the Chicago area. So there's a base. Again, you're not alone on this journey. Of that $65 billion that Illinois exported, small and medium-sized companies accounted for 23% of it. That's substantial, right? Top markets for Illinois companies, there you are. Canada, Mexico, China, Germany, Australia, Japan, UK, Brazil. All excellent markets, all sizable markets. And the state of Illinois promotes exports aggressively. There is grant money available. Grants, free money, are available. The state of Illinois has what's called an I-STEP grant. Now you have to be eligible. And the biggest issue of eligibility is, I know in some of you out there, you have to have your products made, mostly made in Illinois. Some of you don't. That would be a problem for an I-STEP grant. If your product or service is Illinois-based, you could be eligible for a grant. Now, a grant is a subsidy for services. For example, if you wanted to get some translations done, if you wanted to do some things on your website that would make it more available for international e-commerce, those things would be subsidized. Subsidized means you've got to put in some money and the grant would match up with what you put in. So grant money is available, and that's what we can walk you through that process as we get further. And if you're in the food business, there's quite a lot of money available to help Illinois exporters of food. This is certainly something to consider. Serious money is available by an organization called Food Export Midwest, and keep that in mind. Grants. So it's good strategy to export. So here's the entire, not the entire, but here's a lot of this webinar on one slide. This answers a very simple but important question. How will my business grow? And this, your entrepreneurs or your business owners, this is what you ask yourself, I'm sure, all the time. When I used to go overseas, I would go and my distributors in different countries, right? I would go to the UK 3 times a year. I would go to Japan 3 times a year. I'd go to Dubai once a year, and I'd sit down with my distributors, my business partners in these countries, and it would be, how are we going to grow? What do you need to do? What do I need to do to grow your business? In this case, for you, this exporting is a viable, reasonable answer. How will I grow? Exports. Going to markets diversifies your business. Less dependence on just the US economy, and therefore reduces your risk. That's a valid, reasonable, legitimate point of view, right? It adds to production. It builds towards your economies of scale in your business and lowers your unit costs, which helps across your entire business. Again, that's just a fundamental, reasonable point that as you grow and diversify it, lessen your risk and grow your scale, this helps your business. Are your US competitors going international? If so, there's an incentive to keep up, strategically speaking. Now, what about does your competitor go to Canada, the UK, and Italy? Well, then why can't you go to Canada, the UK, and Italy? So besides the strategic point, it can lead you to viable markets. Are your foreign competitors here in your market? Well, a strategic response would be attack them in their market, right? So if there's a competitor from Japan, or there's a competitor from Belgium in this market, number one, strategically, would you attack them in their market? Number two, if your competitor from Belgium can sell here, wouldn't it make sense that you could possibly sell in Belgium? Strategy and tactics. Well, let's talk more about strategy. Since COVID, the game has changed. And are you still following the same strategy as you had a year ago? Does that make sense? As the game has changed, the strategy should change. And export could be another way to adapt to this new environment. Now let's talk about tactics. Exporting can even out the seasonality of your business. For example, if you're making outdoor furniture and you sell it here in the summer, what do you do in the winter? Well, of course, South America is in the southern atmosphere is in summer in the middle of January. There could be a market for you to even out the seasonality of your business. Exporting can be a place where you can sell products that are later in their lifestyles. For example, so I'm a Chicago guy, I'm a sports fan. I follow the Chicago Bears football team. And back in 2006, the Chicago Bears went to the Super Bowl, and there was fever of excitement around the Chicago area. And the Chicago Bears went to that Super Bowl and they lost. Well, what happened to all those hats and t-shirts about Chicago Bears Super Bowl 2006 champion? I found out about 6 months later as I was in Guatemala City. I must have seen 10 guys walk by over the course of a day with their Chicago Bears 2006 champion, Super Bowl champion t-shirts on. So it's a place to dump old products. It's a place to sell last season's product, whatever's last late in their life cycle, last season's last life cycle, last product cycle products can be sold overseas, technically. And again, typically you'll consider exporting after establishing your business in the U.S. We've established that premise, right? But in some odd cases, it may be easier to enter a foreign market first. For example, medical devices. There are manufacturers, and there's a lot of medical startups that people go overseas first because it's just easier to get approval than going through the FDA in the U.S. So sometimes going overseas may be easier and faster. So why will U.S. exports grow over time? For one thing, with U.S. free trade agreements, the growth of e-commerce and better logistics, it's just getting easier to export, okay? Number two, USA has free trade agreements with 20 countries. These would be, for example, Australia, Chile, Colombia, Israel, Korea, and Canada and Mexico, of course. And it's going to be easier to export to those countries, and you'll have an advantage in those countries. For example, let's say that Mexico has a 5% import duty on your widgets, right? But you're selling from the US through a free trade agreement, there are no import duties on your product. But your competitor from France does have to pay that 5% import duty. You've got an advantage in that market. It enhances your competitive position. So free trade agreements are good countries to look at because it's favorable treatment of U.S. products in those countries. And U.S. goods and services are perceived worldwide as being high quality, very innovative, and excellent customer service. U.S. brands have credibility overseas. Made in USA is a strong statement. Made in USA will help sell your product. Cross-border trade will continue to grow. Now, there's the environment in the U.S., the political environment in the U.S. There are some issues with tariffs and blocking trade and et cetera. But outside the USA, there's a lot of people, a lot of governments, a lot of organizations that are continue to work to reduce trade barriers and grow international trade. And there's some of the groups. The WTO, the European Union, is a free trade area. Mercosur is a free trade area in South America. The African Free Trade Agreement. The TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership that we were in, and that promotes trade within Asia. These are, again, a lot of people, powerful people that are working to continue and increase cross-border international trade. Yes, supply chains will shrink because of COVID-19. Yes, factories will bring back factories from China. Companies will bring back factories from China and put them in Mexico, or put them in Central America, or put them in the USA. But selling across borders is not going to stop. People will still look for products that are unique, high quality, high value, that they can't source in their home countries. So there will be continued demand for your products, for US products going forward. Exporting can make yours a better business. Selling internationally brings new challenges, but new insights and new ways to approach issues. From this, you'll learn. This is a truism. This is what I learned in my career. You'll just get better at what you do by selling internationally. It adds new knowledge and new skills to your business. It makes your business stronger. When I used to do my international travels, meet with my international distributors, I would go to, for example, my once or twice a year trip to, for example, Colombia. And I'd sit down with my distributor in Colombia and we talk about how are you going to grow your business? How are we going to grow our business together? And I wasn't there to tell him how to grow his business in Colombia. What do I know about coming once a year? What could I tell him about growing his business in Colombia? But what I could tell him about was, okay, there's somebody in Peru that I just came from, and you know he's faces the same competitors. It's a similar market to Colombia. The economic levels are about the same, and this is what he's doing. This is what he's doing to grow his business in Peru. So I would come in with the helicopter view. The helicopter view is the broad view of what works in different places, and that cross-pollination, that cross-fertilization is what I would do to an ad. That's my added value to that guy in Colombia and his business. And that's what export can do for you, is that what you'll learn overseas can help you in your business at home. It can help you compete in the USA. Competing against somebody in France or against somebody in China can make you stronger, more knowledgeable, and you can bring that home, and that could help you in export country 2, 3, 4, or 5, or in the USA. It brings exposure to new cultures and different ways of thinking. Yes, gives you a broader perspective on how to compete. And there's only a few mentions of culture in these slides. You know what? Culture is a whole other topic we'll get into in the future when we talk about building and managing distribution networks in a future webinar. But yeah, we'll leave that for now. But gives you a broad perspective how to compete. That's true. And it can be more fun. And you know, this is just not a small little line I threw in at the end. I thought about this. Like, okay, you've got a business and you're building this business for the long term, and you're building your exports for the long term. And your industry has an annual trade show in Orlando. Great. And you go to Orlando 7 years in a row, 8 years in a row, and you go to Vegas. Wouldn't you rather go to the trade show in Amsterdam or Dubai or Cape Town or Sydney or Shanghai? It can be more fun. Exporting is a life choice. You know, this is true. I'm the living example that sure, I could have been the Eastern US sales manager, you know, but and I could, and to expand into the Boston market, you look at demographics and segmentation and economics. But when you're looking at exporting, the environment is so richer. It's so richer and enriching, meaning it's more endlessly fascinating. You've got to look at the culture, the politics, economics. It could be the religion. It's such a various, multi-dimensional market. To me, that's interesting. Reminds me of I was working with a company that was very successful that made widgets in Detroit, and they were growing. They needed to put a new factory, and the owner of the company said, "Well, we're going to put our new factory in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina." Why would that owner why Myrtle Beach, South Carolina? Because he liked golf. And Myrtle Beach has 65 golf courses. If you're a business owner, you know, sure, you could have saved 10 cents per unit going to Alabama, but he put it in Myrtle Beach, and him and his family golfed all the time while they ran their business. Exporting is similar. You know what? If you're running your business owners, your entrepreneurs, if you start exporting, it may change your life. Let's say you get up and running with that French distributor. Let's say you get up and running with the Australian or the South African distributor or the Moroccan distributor. Well, eventually you've got to go there. Guess what? Not bad that you have to go to Paris to talk to your distributor once a week, or you have to go to Costa Rica in the middle of January to talk to your Central American distributor or business partner or owner of a retail outlet. So this is real, that it can be more fun. It'll enrich your life. It's a life choice. And you know, if you're in a position, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, why not make this more fun? And what about e-commerce? The pandemic, of course, we've all heard, has done a huge boost to e-commerce. With a web presence, you can have an international sales and marketing platform. Worldwide e-commerce is growing quickly. It'll double to over a $2 trillion market. The fastest growth is coming in Asia Pacific. And today, China is the biggest e-commerce market in the world. So if you're looking into e-commerce, some things you need to know about it as time goes on. You need to know about website localization, which means, okay, if somebody searches for my product and does a search on Google in the US, they find me. If somebody in Canada goes on to Google and looks for does a Google of your product category, will they find you? Probably not. You need to be on Google CA, Google Canada. Will somebody who's looking for your product category in France find you? No, you've got to be on Google FR, right, in France for them to find you. Or, yeah, so that's what website localization is about. So if you're going to be on a website in France, you'll probably need translations, right? So these are the components that if you want to go down that e-commerce road, you've got to consider. And a mobile-friendly website or platform are also important. More than the majority of transactions that take place in the largest e-commerce e-commerce market in the world, in China, take place on a mobile phone. Okay, let's fill in the blanks a little more about e-commerce. Online B2B and B2C marketplaces exist, of course, offer virtual storefronts in a global market. This could be an Amazon.com, right? You can also ship your goods direct to users, or you could ship them to somebody's warehouse and they'll fulfill the orders. Different ways of structuring your business. We're working with a company that's looking to get into, say, the Home Depot of Canada. And the Home Depot of Canada will put their product on their website and access most of the Canadian market. When the orders come in, our company in Chicago will ship direct to the consumer. That's one way to do it. The next step is, when there's enough business, let's get and it's not Home Depot, but it's a typical Home Depot-like company. Next is we want to let them fulfill orders out of their warehouse. Okay, so the things we can consider as we're structuring that e-commerce business. Another way to do it is just on your own website. Maybe your own website, maybe you're on Amazon, and it's not necessarily that you're selling on Amazon, but maybe Amazon drives traffic to your own website. Maybe you're using your own website to create demand in another country, and you're driving orders to the local distributor who can fill orders. And as items are sold there, you restock the goods by sending more product to him. Because remember, let's go back, let's say the UK, let's say Australia, you get 1,000 orders. Would you rather put those 1,000 orders on a pallet and ship that to Australia to get redistributed? Or would you rather go to UPS 1,000 times by yourself? What's more cost effective? So we have to consider that as we're setting up an e-commerce channel. E-commerce can be a good first way to export and a way to gauge demand in a new market, okay? And there's a whole constellation of service providers that can help you build your website, do your translations, offer payment solutions, help you with the documentation to go across borders, ship it anywhere. UPS and FedEx are big into this business, and they're quite helpful. That if you want to build an international e-commerce business, you can do it. And remember, e-commerce is just a single channel. We can have an international distributor and an e-commerce channel as in a particular market. So these are all things to look at. There's also virtual international trade shows and trade missions that are being done now at extremely low cost. This can be a way that you can check a new market. The state of Illinois had a trade show in Columbia a couple months ago. It was a virtual trade show, and it cost $100 for Illinois companies to display in this virtual trade show. And I looked at the format, and it was amazing. You're walking through this trade show. There's the booth. There's people in the booths that could be your avatar. That you'd somebody walking through that trade show walks up, asks for product information, can have a dialogue with. Amazing what's being done. So this exists as well, and it's something to keep in mind. So what about retail? What about international retail? Well, placing your products with US retailers gives you instant credibility with foreign retailers. They assume that if you're good enough for US retail in terms of product or your operations and your support, you can meet their needs. So if you're into Macy's here, you're probably good enough to go into department stores in Europe, where department stores are still quite a viable channel in Europe. It's a reasonable assumption you can get in there. If you're good enough for Walgreens here, that you can go with pharmacies overseas. You're into Target here, you can get into retail overseas. So that's a good platform. So if you're into retail here, we've got a place to stand to investigate international retail. Many US retailers have foreign locations. Walgreens, again, if you're into Walgreens now, Walgreens sells in 11 other countries. Home Depot is in Mexico and Canada. I think it's Sally Beauty is in another 12 countries. And things are structured differently. Some retailers have centralized decision makers, meaning that if you get into their company in the US, you can move through within their organization to access their international retail arms, where some are decentralized, meaning that, okay, you're into Home Depot USA, you have to go to Home Depot Mexico and make your own case because that guy in Mexico doesn't really care that your product is in Home Depot here. He's got to make his money and keep his job and show his profit in Mexico. So you have to make your case, but you can probably get an introduction, and that would be helpful. So how retailers are, US retailers are structured overseas, it differs, and you just check it out and track it down. And as with any business, there's international business. There you have to consider language and labels and packaging and logistics, et cetera. And your foreign channel structure may be different than how you go to market here. Okay, that's an assumption that we know we have to deal with. Why now? Okay, so there's some points for why export. And now, why now? Why does this work? Yeah, these are uncertain times, but uncertainty is not the same as risk. Entrepreneurs thrive in times of uncertainty. From Mark Cuban to Warren Buffett, you can find dozens and dozens of people who are successful business people who say, now is the time, there are opportunities in times like these. Recessions create tremendous opportunities for market disruption. After 2008 crash, Airbnb and Uber were born. Both found ways to disrupt old business models and offered creative and viable alternatives to traditional systems. Recessions can act as filters that weed out weak businesses. So who's going to come out of this, the COVID situation? Well, for one, we're going to look 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Who's going to come out of this? Well, we can, for one, is Zoom, right? And there'll be more. Opportunity exists in times like this. What did Rahm Emanuel say? Never let a good opportunity, good crisis go to waste. And there's some truth into that. And business-wise, strategically, now is the time to, that's a reason to look at expanding your exports now. More reasons now? Again, it gets to that question, how are you going to grow? Well, you know what, let's step back. Let's think of those international partners and distributors that are overseas. Let's think of those other retailers that are overseas. They're like you right now. They're looking for ways to grow as well. And engage them now on your innovative product or service. They're looking for ways to grow now. Maybe they got a little extra time. When times are good, for a new product, they have to invest time and energy and resources to get it up and running. When times are good, they might be too busy. Now they have time. Now there could be a gap in the market where your product would interest them. So now's the time to engage these international partners. The market's disrupted. Is there room in the market now because some competitors have failed? Market disruption, new players coming and going. Maybe that's a space for you. Maybe the big player has failed and there's room for you. I'll give you an example. We're working with a company that makes PPE, COVID-related PPE, and we're looking at the Mexican market. And there's a Mexican company making the same product. But let's say the demand for that product is 10,000 units a month, and that Mexican manufacturer can only make 9,000, and their price is lower. Who's going to sell them the other 1,000? And is the demand going to go away for PPE in COVID times in Mexico in the short term? No. So there's all kinds of disruptions and changes happening in markets now that a new product or service can come in and fill in those gaps. A big point is the US dollar is getting weaker against some currencies globally. This is really important. It's getting, for example, it's getting weaker. The US dollar is getting weaker in Europe, which means the price of US product in the European markets is less now. Dollar's been strong for about the last 6 years, and this is the first time in 6 years it's coming down, coming back, which makes US products cheaper in those international markets. So by doing nothing, your product is 5% cheaper now than it was 6 months ago in the European markets. So that's really important to watch the dollars. Forecasters anticipate this trend of a weakening US dollar will continue. Again, it's weakening in Europe, it's weakening in against some Asian currencies, Australia currency, and really important, and gives a tailwind to your product and your efforts now. And because of COVID, there may be better opportunities outside the US. I think it's a truism. As COVID goes, so goes the economic recovery of countries. And given that, the pandemic has subsided in many countries, and economic activity is increasing in those places. Now, I was going to put in a chart of all the different COVID cases and death rates, and that to make the point, I don't think it's necessary. It's clear that the US is still a COVID hotspot. It's clear that there's other countries that are handling it better. It's clear that some of these countries are coming out of their COVID-induced recessions, and things are approaching, heading towards normal again. East Asia is going to be an example of that. Japan, China, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark Saudi Arabia are all examples of places where, even though they have flare-ups, that their handling of COVID is better, and therefore their economies are reacting favorably are improving quicker than here. So if your US market is stuck in the doldrums, you may be forced to look elsewhere outside the country. Timing. So why now? Because prepare now for the rebound. And again, it's already happening in some regions, such as East Asia and Europe. And getting ready to go international requires some time and preparation. You have to start now to target 2021 sales. Understanding how to put things together, finding new partners, setting up conditions with them, getting people trained on your products, possibly finding your freight forwarders, finding your customs people, all take time. But remember, it sounds like a lot, but remember, everybody else who's exporting is doing the same thing. It's a big world out there, and there's opportunity somewhere, and this always worked for me. So my job was global and global in nature. My job was, when I was working for US companies, was sell our products internationally, and having the whole world to go. If this part of the world was down, there was always someplace else where it wasn't down. There wasn't a recession. If you're Caterpillar, if you're a giant multinational, you know what? Your options are less to find some place where there's money, to find some place where they're healthier than other markets. But if you're a small exporter and you're looking for your first $1 million of export out of a $75 trillion global economy, there's plenty of places to go. There's plenty of opportunities to go. There are places to go and find opportunity and find healthy economies. And 2021 is looking to be a better year. So here's just a forecast put out by the OECD. The OECD is a large, well-known organization that's into economic forecasting. They're called the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And these are their forecasts about what's happening next year in a select number of countries. And you can see there's a low estimate and high estimate. And those are good numbers. That the European Union is forecast between 3.5% and 6.5% growth next year. That even Mexico is 2 to 3% growth. Of course, it's coming off low COVID-induced recessions, but growth is coming back. And again, these are tailwinds for your business. So the point is, coming back to the International Trade Center, we can help you do this. There are a lot of moving parts, but we can help, and we start with we can do one-on-one sessions. Everything's no cost, everything's no fee with the International Trade Center at the WBDC, and let's just start to talk about your exporting journey. Or if you're a company that already exports, we want to talk about new opportunities, new countries, new market segments. And as mentioned previously, there's going to be future webinars on international trade topics. And it's more than me. There's a whole network behind me of public and private entities that support the $65 billion of Illinois exports. These could be, again, a network of freight forwarders, a network of bankers, and of trade compliance attorneys, of people with the state of Illinois that are involved with international trade, of people with the U.S. Department of Commerce. Across a lot of different categories, we can put you in touch with these people to help you along. Okay, so what's next? I think exporting sounds interesting. Where do I go from here? Well, if you think it's a good idea, you have to commit for a start. Just like anything else, whether you're going to introduce a new product, whether you're going to expand to the California market, whether you're going to learn tennis or golf, if you're going to be good at it, you have to commit to it. And that's what you have to do to exporting as well. There's no shortcuts or halfway to do it. You have to commit to say, I want to become an exporter. And again, we'll help you on that journey. Oh, but it's so complicated. There's paperwork and compliance. Yes, it's more complicated than shipping to Minnesota. But let's say your first market, and it just has to be one to get started, right? Let's set up your process, set up your structure once to ship to the UK. You get your freight forwarder lined up, get your banker lined up. After you ship to the UK and things are up and running, you can add Australia, you can add South Africa, you can add the United Arab Emirates to your exports. You set up the product, process, and structure once, and then you grow from there. So if this sounds interesting, let's set up a time to talk. I want to understand what you sell, how you compete, what's your value proposition. This is where we start trying to determine whether you're ready to export and whether you can sell your product internationally. And let's say we get to that point, and many of you that I've talked to are ready and are able, in my mind, able to sell internationally. So what do? We've got and this is where we've got a pretty powerful tool to help you. The International Trade Center's got access to some proprietary market research programs where we can, plus we've got a very, very talented market researcher where we can do some work for you to identify your top 3 to 5 markets to focus on. And once we get that far, let's talk about your ideal channel. Let's talk about your customers. Okay, so we've identified that Canada and Mexico and Germany and Australia are the top markets because we've looked at trade flows. We've looked at exports from the US. We've looked at a lot of some different financial indicators that we have identified those top markets. Well, is a distributor the way to go? Is selling direct the way to go? Is a retailer the way to go? Or some combination the way to go? To structure your channel. That's where we can talk about it. And once we understand what channel looks like, the next step is let's talk to the state of Illinois that may have offices in these countries. Or if not, there may be the U.S. Department of Commerce in that country may be somebody for us to talk to say, okay, this is our product. We're looking for somebody that looks like Macy's in the French market. And we'd like, oh, by the way, it's Galeries Lafayette is a great department store in the French market. And the Department of Commerce at the U.S. Embassy in Paris can introduce us to Galeries Lafayette in the French market. Or the state of Illinois and Canada can help us find 2 or 3 distributors who sell your type of products to the type of customers that you're looking for. So this is where our network comes in. This is where our state and federal partners come in. to help us identify that pool of partners that can help you. So what we want to do is, here's a pool of partners, meaning here's a potential channel partners that we think can help you. Okay, but now we're down to, let's say, 3 importers that we think could work. Now it's time to narrow it down further to channel and partner selection. This is where we can guide you. This is where I spent my career, that understanding, all right, here's our options to enter this market. Let's weigh the pros and cons of each. There's negotiations with each as we try to understand what's our best way to structure the channel in that market. Let's say we're going to Germany. Let's say we got 3 choices, company A, B, and C. Company A is a big organization that's got offices in every big city in Germany, that's got 200 people, that's got 100 product lines, and also has your competitor product line. Do we go with company A? Company B is located just in Munich and just covers southern Germany. They're a smaller business. They're into the same markets, but and also they don't handle a competitor of yours. Company C is another big company that's got full German geography coverage. They, let's say you make mops, they make buckets, and they sell buckets every place. But they don't know the mop business. They don't know, you have to do the training. You have to get them up to speed on how to sell mops. A, B, or C, there's pluses and minuses for each. Somebody brings you focus. Somebody you could get lost in somebody brings you coverage. Somebody you can get lost in the weeds, so to speak. And this is where we can help you sorting through that, negotiating with these potential partners, and yeah, and then you move to the next step. Okay, real business, orders. Again, access our network of experts to help you with the shipping, with the payments, with the documentation, with any compliance issues. As you get into it, we can help you because we know people that experts in each of these fields. So back to our International Trade Center. We're here for you. We've seen this before. We can help you with that plan. We can access that market research. That's very powerful. We can help you with your strategy and your channel structure. We can help you with your shipping and logistics. We can help you about payments and Exim Bank, US Export-Import Bank, what they can do for you. And remember the grants. And we've got more webinars to come. The next one will be in October. We'll just talk an overview of export basics. In the future after that, building an export plan, finding international distributors. We'll do a deep dive into that ABC type of scenario, managing international distribution. How do you've got 5 or 10 distributors in 5 or 10 countries. How do you manage that? We'll talk about culture then. We're going to bring an expert in to talk about shipping and logistics. We'll bring people in another webinar to talk about trade finance and getting paid. So we want to be your resource, your go-to for growing your international business. Okay, exporting requires hard work, but hopefully, as I made the point, it's good for your business. And you know what? It could be good for you too. But there's no shortcut. There's no halfway. It requires your ongoing determination and commitment. But again, you're not alone on that journey. We can help you. We'd like to try. We can help you. We can guide you. We can advise you. But you know what? You're going to have to do the work. But the rewards are great for exporting and doing international business. Again, both for your company and could be for you personally. If you want to go further, reach out. There's my email, or just schedule. And many of you, we've already talked. You can reschedule a meeting on the WBDC website, or just call us and set an appointment. I'd be glad to talk. So we've got a few minutes left for questions. Let's see if there's anything in chat or Q&A that I could cover. Let's see if I can. Sorry, let me look at these now. Whoa, hold on. Copy of the slides, yes, we'll send them out. Yes, slides for the business plan. And let us help you fill out your business plan, your export part of your business plan. Sorry, we should email the various resources institutions mentioned. We have an international resource list that has the list of bankers and freight forwarders and some other service providers that the international trade centers in Illinois use. So, and we're not going to say use this banker. We'll give you a list of 3 or 4 bankers and you can talk to them and see who meets your needs best. But these are all experienced people, people that we've worked with in the past that we have confidence in. So we can send that out to you as well. How long does it take to get ready? I'm going to say, I'm going to say 6 months ish. You know what? We talked about the help from the state and federal people. And the thing is, let's say, you know what? They're busy because there's a lot of other people asking for their service. So if we go to the Department of Commerce office in Canberra, Australia, and ask for a search for an industrial supply house that sells to heavy industry in Australia, you know what? We might be 20th in line. So that could be the delay. It could take time. So I would say, in general, my experience, given those delays, 6 months ish to get going on exporting. Is there a list or a web platform at Illinois Exports? Not that I know of. Let me go into another, look at a few more of these, see what I see. How many locations does the state of Illinois have outside the country? I'm thinking there's, I don't know, 6 to 8. They're in Canada, they're in Mexico, they're in Europe, Belgium for the European market. They're in the Middle East, in Israel for the Middle East market. They're in Shanghai for the Chinese market. They're in Tokyo for the rest of the Asia Pacific market. I may have missed one, but that's where they're at. And of course, the US Department of Commerce is everywhere. Does the market research component come in the form of a report? No, there's not a formalized report. We have proprietary sources that we're not necessarily able to use and analyze and gather information from those reports, but we can't send you the reports. Well, that's all I got. And here it takes us right into 1 o'clock. So that's all I see on the Q&A and chat. So I want to thank you for attending, everybody. And we'll let you, again, reach out as needed if you'd like to talk more about your particular business and the road we can take to exporting there. And hopefully you'll tune in for our next webinars coming up. The next one in October about just the exporting basics. A little more detail is what we'll provide then. So thanks for your attention and have a good rest of your day.